I gotta say, I was one happy little camper when I finally got this book in the mail. I've said it before, growing up where I was, it was a small little rural town. Every comic shop that tried to open for like 5, 6 years straight would always eventually shut down because that's how small it was and there wasn't that big of a demand. So trying to get comics where I was something else. Every time we went out of town, I would grab as many as my parents would let me whenever we'd hit up a comic shop. But the main way that I was able to get books was, or at least know what was going on in the comic community, was Wizard. And I'm so thankful that was around when I was a kid, that at least still showed up in grocery magazines before the drag market took over. But anyway, I kind of remember rumblings about Superman the Man of Steel issue 1, and I'm glad to finally have it in my collection. And that cover, iconic, man, just beautiful. This was what, July 1991? This is shortly after Louise Simonson left Marvel. If you watch Chris Claremont's X-Men, she talked about how at the time the editors that were coming in after Jim Shooter were kind of giving more creative freedom to the artists rather than the writers. And so that's why a lot of what she would do, Rob Liefeld would change. And she said somewhere, and I don't remember what she said verbatim, but she said that's when I left for DC and got on Man of Steel. And you can see, just like with John Byrne and her and Ann Nocenti, you can kind of see how Chris Claremont, or at least how all of them kind of rubbed off on one another creatively. Now listen to the way that this first issue is just kind of begins to build up. Metropolis, a city in transition. Last night in its decaying Wharf District, a warehouse was destroyed by a terrorist's firebomb. But this morning, in the city's gleaming heat, it's business as usual. The word goes out. And then you start to see people on strike for this bus depot. And there's that scab, stop him! And I love how Louise Simonson can kind of show how people are feeling on both sides here, where the people that are on strike are saying, you know, we want better conditions, we want better pay, we want to be able to live, for God's sake. But they show what happens when people take it too far. They shoot at the scab bus, and they go, it's out of control, and Superman hears it. And look at the way our hero is introduced. Just boom! Just one of those classic, like, you'd see Superman jumping in front of a train or whatever. In this case, it's a bus. Perfect portrayal in the way they just show Superman, who was created by Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster. This is Man of Steel, Man of Fire. And for this first number 1, I love how there's a lot of creatives. I don't want to go through all of them. As I said, Louise Simonson's the writer. You guys can pause this and look at all the creatives, but look at everybody they threw at this book to promote it, and it shows. Absolutely gorgeous work. Lots of big names. Now, what I mean by Louise showing both sides, we just seen the scabs and why they're so mad that there's people that want to work. But then the guy comes in and goes, man, oh man, I only took that scab jobs because I've been out of work for so long. I just wanted to feed my family. I never thought they'd try to kill me. So just a great way to show what happens, and like how a lot of times people get tunnel vision and forget to look at both sides of an argument. And again, I think this is the first time we see this little kid. What's his name? Hold on a second. I think his name's Keith. Hold on a sec. I gotta look through here. I can't remember. But I think this, if I'm wrong, feel free to correct me, but when we get into the death of Superman and there's that little kid that's promised by those monsters that they have his mom, and he takes off and Superman has to save him again, I think this is who this little boy is. I can't remember off the top of my head. But yeah, Keith. He goes, bye, Keith. Take good care of Tiger. And he goes, he's gone, Aunt Maria, and I didn't even get to say thanks. And I love how she just says, you just whisper it, honey. That man's got super ears, so I hear, and a super heart. I just bet you he's ready to be able to listen to just about anything you gotta say. And so it just kind of shows the metal and the heart of Superman that a lot of people tend to forget. Because around this time, people were saying they were tired of Superman because he's this big Boy Scout. And you can kind of see the attitude of comics changing at the time. And that's why they had to do something so extreme as to kill him. But people forget what Superman's supposed to stand for. Now, there's also a subplot with Jimmy, talking about getting his own place, moving out of his mom's because he had to move back in with her for a little bit. And again, just you feel all these tensions rising. And Superman's starting to see visions of Krypton on Earth, and he's seeing these little sunspots happen on the Earth. And I love how it just says, where is it? Sun's still in my eyes, so bright, can hardly see. Head starting to pound. What's the matter with me? What's that? Another storm, a sunspot millions of miles across the scar of the face of the sun. What can cause an eruption so big, so violent? And we don't get a whole lot of introduction to the character. He just goes, at last, I am. Just a great way to make it go, wait a minute, what? It makes you want to turn the page more. Now the Kents are coming to visit Clark, but because everything that's going on with this terrorist and things happening with the weather, Superman is literally stretched thin, and he's not sure what to do. He goes, luckily Cerberus chose a relatively deserted shipping area. But why? Who is it? Who knows and who he is and what he wants? Who is he threatening that with further destruction, and why? And then he sees his parents, and there's a point where he gets with Lois. I'm not 100% sure where it is, but he goes, do I even deserve a secret identity? And we can see how the Man of Steel is stretched thin as he starts to sweat, and he goes, it's nothing, Ma, it's just a headache. But son, you don't get headaches. And then before we can get any further into that, we get one little tease at who this mysterious stranger from the heart of the sun is. I have been reborn and reforged and released to become what I've always been, and to enhance the well-being of those who's truly Kryptonian. But Krypton was destroyed along with all of her sons save two. One was embryonic flesh and had his birth on a primitive planet circling a white-hot star, while I, a machine, sought to help him fulfill his Kryptonian destiny. Our goals conflicted, and he succeeded only in releasing my full potential. And so my mission goes on. But which facet of my mission will prevail? That's how you write a comic. And again, same with the relationship. You can see how much these two love each other. And of course, I love the way that it's written, where he can't just flat out right there in the Daily Planet center say that he's Superman. And before, again, we can even get further into what these two are discussing, another powder keg hits, layoffs at the Daily Planet. Talk about cost-cutting measures, and Perry White is on vacation. So this guy in his stead decides to slip in and do it. And someone that we know and care about gets the slip, and it's just heartbreaking. I love the way that while we're waiting for this big reveal of who this character from the stars is, we're seeing how everyone's trying to survive this Cerberus attacks, accumulations of other story arcs, this whole thing with this crystal, where if it gets put back together, all human life will be sucked into it. Superman's the only one that's able to really save people from it. Perry trying to save his marriage and his health by taking a vacation, only to hear about what's happening at the Daily Planet. It's just so much going on, and done in such a respectful way to the characters. And of course, showing Superman and what type of person he is. And as we finally get to the end, we get some payoff on who Cerberus is, and who this visitor from the stars is, and what he wants with Kal-El. I don't want to give too much away, but just from what you could see, the classic traditional art styles on display here, the gorgeous coloring techniques all before the digital. It's just stuff like this that we really need to preserve and keep for posterity. You know what I'm trying to say. I haven't had enough coffee today, so my vocabulary is quite limited at the moment, folks. But nonetheless, Superman the Man of Steel, #1. If you guys can find this copy, highly recommend to support your local comic shop and go dig into those back issues and get this one. in your collection or wherever it is you like to get your action figures and comic books. And if you've enjoyed this review, really would appreciate if you take a moment to hit like, share, and subscribe. Helps the channel more than you could possibly know. And if you don't mind hitting that fancy Kryptonian bell next to subscribe, that way as I continue to upload content, you guys get notified. Come to the channel, and I love talking with y'all and hearing your thoughts and feedback down in the comments or the socials, which I'll make sure to leave the links down in the description. So with all that said, hope y'all continue to have an absolutely amazing day reading, and happy hunting, everyone.